Hey, so when I was in Salt Lake working for another credit union, there was a coworker, actually a boss at the time, that listened to some of the things that he liked. There was a certain group, a band that he liked to listen to, a music group, and he also liked kind of old things, and so like records, if you know what a record is, flat piece of vinyl. Uh, but I went out and I purchased that album um, that I knew that he liked, and I presented it to him. It was an unexpected gift, and I think he was very grateful, and I think it had some impact on him. He told me a number of times how nice it is to give a gift that's thoughtful and unexpected. And I thought a lot about gifts, and in the Bible, in the book of Matthew, the Lord talks about gifts in chapter 7, verses 8 through 11. This is where he's talking about seeking God. But the version that I'll use here is the Amplified Bible version, which I kind of liked. And it says, "For everyone who keeps on asking receives, and he who keeps on seeking finds, and to him who keeps on knocking it will be opened. Or what man is there among you who, if his son asks for bread, will instead give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will instead give him a snake? If you then, being evil or sinful by nature, as you are, know how to give good and advantageous gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven, perfect as he is, give what is good and advantageous to those who keep on asking him?" So from this few verses, I think there's some two major things that we can learn. And number one is persistence. If you keep on looking, keep on seeking, knocking, you will find what you're looking for. He will answer. You'll be given what you need. You will not look in vain, but a price must be paid really for every blessing that's given. And for instance, just recently, my son has been spending a lot of time looking for cars, and there's been some that he's really liked, and I'll show them to me. But we ended up buying a car that somebody didn't like, something very inexpensive. It was a manual transmission, this old Honda 94 Honda Accord. It's a great little car for $800. And even though he didn't like it, it was great for him. A great first car. But let's say he found a seller of a car that was asking a lot more money, and he went to the seller and he said, I really, 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 really like your car. And would you give it to me? And of course, the seller would think he was crazy. Of course, no amount of begging is going to allow, or a seller would never concede, say, sure, I'll just sign the title over to you. 99.999% of the time, that's never going to happen. There's some things that need to happen. The seller's going to say, well, what are you willing to pay for this car? And you might have to end up finding a job and working for 5 years, putting money aside, and then coming back to a seller and saying, hey, you're asking this much for the car, and I've worked and worked and worked and sacrificed all this time to accumulate this money, and I'm willing to part with it for your car. So there's a price to be paid. And I think it goes with the same thing with uh, things that we want from the Lord. What are we willing to sacrifice to get the things that we need? Are you willing to pay the price? Are you willing to pray for hours and hours and hours, days day over day, month after month? Are you willing to study the scriptures and looking for answers for hours and hours? Are you willing to wake up at 4 a.m. before work and before you work out to look for answers and plead with God for help? That's some of the things you might be asked to pay before you're given those answers, those blessings. And I think it's a good thing. If we didn't have to do that, how much would we value the blessings he gave us? If someone signed over a car to you, or your parents just went out and bought it for you, how much do you value something that's given to you with no payment? Very little. And so, I've heard of people talking about going to gifts. There are different levels of gifts that are given. And the Lord was talking about this level, a level that we give as parents, and a level of giving that he gives as God. I've heard a lot of parents or adults say to me, I've accumulated a lot of money, and instead of waiting until I die, I think I'm going to, gift a bunch of money to my kids and just watch them enjoy this money. That will be a good gift. And I think, is that really the best gift? If I had a lot of money, what would I want to do? Maybe use that money to spend time together, but that's their decision. And maybe that was the right gift. But so instead of sometimes giving your kids money, sometimes it's better to give them the gift of learning how to earn the money. Instead of giving them bread, give them a stone, which could be used to grind your wheat and make the bread. So God gives on a much higher level. Sometimes it looks like God is giving us a stone or a snake instead of bread or fish. But that's because we have very limited vision. We can't see the long term. We can't see very far ahead. Let's say that I had kind of a dead-end job and I wasn't happy. I wasn't making enough money to support a family, which is very common these days. And I started praying and praying and looking for direction and looking for answers and maybe even fasting. And then all of a sudden, instead of getting a promotion at work, I get fired or I get laid off. Did God give you a snake by accident? No, there's no accidents. In a lot of cases, you might see that as the wrong gift, but usually leads to finding a better job and better environment. So what you were asking for, a lower level blessing, like getting a promotion at a company with more pay, he answered with a higher level gift that you got fired or laid off, and then found that better job with better pay and better environment, maybe more opportunities to grow. So there are lower types of gifts, probably, that us humans give, and then higher level gifts that God gives us. If I was to give you an example, I was praying for months and months to find a new job after I had been passed over for a promotion that had been promised to me for many years. And I've talked about this in other videos, but this story applies here too. And here's a tip. Let's step aside from that for a minute. If you're ever in that position where you feel like you've been unjustly treated, don't take your first reactions like, well, I'm going to get even with these people. I have not been treated fairly. I'm going to make their lives miserable and I'm going to quit. I could have done that, and it would have led to many more hardships instead of just swallowing my pride and going with the flow and asking God for help. So that's the tip. Don't ever quit a job before you have a new job. And I know a lot of you say, well, how do you find a new job if you're working full time? Well, I can't do it. Well, that's bullcrap. You have time in the evenings to be looking, sending out resumes in the evenings, and then going on interviews during lunch breaks and stuff like that. But if you do quit, you put your families in a financial difficulty if it takes you a long time to get a new job. And in this case, if I would have done that, I would have been without work for 5 years. So it wouldn't have been a good thing. So during when this decision was first made, I was looking for months and months for a new job, interviewing and doing lots of things, sending out resumes with no luck. Had God given me a snake instead of a fish, or a stone instead of bread? No. Matter of fact, I ended up, like I said, working there for another 5 years before it was the right time and I found the right job. And during that time, God gave me so many blessings. He's so good. I got to know this guy that replaced me, and we became really good friends. And if I was to call him today, I could talk to him and we could reconnect. We're good friends, and I enjoy that as a blessing. So I was asking for a lower level blessing. He was answering with a higher level, which meant at that time not to give me a new job. So eventually I did. Eventually I did find something new. But during that 5 years, towards the end of that 5 years, there were some things that made it necessary for me to start looking again. A small credit union, there were at the time only 3 employees. So me and 2 other people, and the 2 other people had health insurance through their spouses. I was the main provider, and so I didn't have that option. You can't get group coverage with a group of 1. And so the premiums, if the credit union was to pick up those premiums, were just outrageous. And so they opted to have me go get my own insurance, and they reimbursed me for those premiums. But the problem is the individual coverage for health insurance was very poor. It didn't cover a lot of things. Matter of fact, during this time, it was very difficult because of that limited coverage that we're paying for that was being subsidized. There were some things that were going on that I just wanted to read to you for a minute, an entry out of my journal from many years ago. See, very helpful to write down some of your thoughts and to reflect on those things. I think a journal, writing down what happens in your life, is very valuable. So this is talking about leaving the credit union I had been at for 21 years. And I say, why would I leave a job of 21 years? Many reasons, but it came to one reason: health insurance. At this credit union, we didn't have any, and we were paying over $1,200 a month for individual coverage, which was more than my mortgage payment. This caused a great deal of financial pain, especially after a hospital stay of one of our sons of 2 months. He was in the hospital for 2 months. A few years prior to that, that left us with thousands of dollars in medical bills. Because of his type of stay, they wouldn't cover it, so we had to pay it. And so in order to avoid future pain caused by crappy insurance, my wife went and got a job at Costco. Costco was about the only place in town that would give you benefits, health insurance, for part-time work. Can I tell you how humiliating it was for me to have my 45-year-old wife, who is a princess, pushing carts in the rain, shopping carts. She was good about it, but her constant time away from us was painful. You know, she had to work on the weekends and evenings. And after about a year of working there, she said, enough. You have to get a new job. You can't go through another holiday season doing what they ask you to do. During the holidays, it's mostly full time and you're working like a lot. And so because of that, that was the reason I started looking again. The Lord is so good. He understood exactly what we were going through. And I can't say it wasn't a good thing for my wife to go through that for that year. I think she appreciates me and the health insurance that my new job provides much more than the average person that hasn't gone through that. He's so good. He helped me through the whole process. We started praying and asking for help. Sorry. When I got the new job, since I had been working at the other place for 21 years, it felt like I was getting divorced from all these people, moving to a new job. It created this like big emptiness inside of me. And I've realized that's kind of a pattern that God uses. He does. He makes a hole. You feel empty in many things. And then he fills it in with better things. So going back, during this process of getting the new job, I was praying, my wife was praying, my mother-in-law, she um, there was a lot of family members praying for this. And as I was looking at a website that posted jobs, I saw one that was of interest that had an executive level position for another credit union that I was well qualified for. And I went to send the resume, and I felt this sense of urgency. I didn't have even one day to delay. I had to get it in right away. And it was very interesting because after I was hired and I heard the story from the HR lady's side, she had all, by the time I sent my resume in, they had already closed kind of their process to receiving new resumes. They'd already had enough. They had a lot. But when she saw mine, for whatever reason, she said, "Hey," she went to the president. "Hey, you've got one more you need to look at. I think it's worth looking at." And so if I hadn't reacted and followed up on that impression, they probably would have been down the road with another applicant where it wouldn't have been an opportunity anymore. Anyway, through a series of a number of interviews, all the pieces just fell together. It was like just meant to be. And I ended up getting a job there. And it was a great blessing. It was a new environment, much more challenging, stressful. I learned a lot. God is so good. He orchestrated. He orchestrated that whole thing. Why didn't he give me that job 5 years before when I first was passed over for that promotion? Why didn't he do it and answer my prayers? He gives good gifts. If we trust in God, he will always give you more and better than what you think is possible.